All right. It is time for another episode. Another episode of the Entrepreneurial You is coming at you right here, right now. I am your host, Henika Watkis-Porter. I have been doing this show for over 300 weeks now. Go figure. Yes, that's the brilliance of consistency. You keep going. You start at one, you keep going, then you will get to 305, right? So, welcome back to you for those who have been listening over and again. And for those that are joining me for the very first time, a very warm and special welcome to you. Now, again, I'm at it live also, not just the podcast, the recording, but I'm going live and in living colors on social media. Right now, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube, and I am on LinkedIn. Isn't technology beautiful? Yeah.
Mhm.
So last week, I spoke with Irina Podunai, and she is a SaaS founder, that's software as a service founder, and a business consultant specializing in operations and processes optimization. We did a nice little chat. We shared her experience running a fulfillment center out of China where she lived for 2 years. And this week, I'm really excited about talking with the distinguished professor of entrepreneurship and chief entrepreneurship officer at Ball State University. Of course, before I start the conversation with him, I have to thank the Jamaica Stock Exchange who continuously support the show from the day one, the very get go. So they're like my ride or die, right? So here's a word from the JSC, and after that, I will introduce my guest and get our conversation on the go. So my guest on episode 305 of the Entrepreneurial You is Michael Goldsby. Now, Mike is Stoops Distinguished Professor of Entrepreneurship and Chief Entrepreneurship Officer at Ball State University. He co-authors the book Design-Centered Entrepreneurship, and that book provides a research-driven step-by-step approach to creative problem solving. Mike, I'm eager to speak with you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be on the show, Hanika. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Now, first and foremost, what do you know, if anything, about the Jamaican culture? And that is your path to this conversation.
Well, I'd have to say that over the last year, I've started learning how to play guitar. So I've taken to trying to learn how to play a little Bob Marley. So that would probably be my connection to your
Ah,
spiritual and musical culture there that I have come to really appreciate and admire.
mhm. Yeah, one love, one love. Let's get together and feel all right. I
Right.
like it a lot. Yeah, you've passed. That's your entry into the conversation.
All right.
So we're going to be talking design-centered entrepreneurship, but let's lay some things on attack some things at the foundation. So you are Stoops Distinguished Professor of Entrepreneurship and Chief Entrepreneurship Officer at Ball State University. Kind of break that down a little for us. What does that really mean?
Sure. So I wear a lot of different hats, like
Yeah,
probably you do.
and you're not wearing any right now.
I'm not. No, I'm not.
As in
Uh,
physically, literally, right?
exactly. But today I'm actually in my institute. I have an institute on the Ball State campus where we provide training and thought leadership and think tank activity. So I'm in my institute today. So today I have my uh, co-director of the Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute and my chief entrepreneurship officer hat on because this is our outreach. And you're today, right now, with you as part of outreach, getting ideas out there for people to be entrepreneurial and successful. And we are a donor supported institute. And then tomorrow I'll be going over to the business building and putting my professor hat on and teaching students, and then later having research meetings. So much like you and other entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneurship professor, it just depends on the day which hat I'm wearing or not wearing, and trying to focus on helping more people come up with thriving businesses and dealing with the challenges that come with doing that.
Absolutely. That sounds great. So we're going to start with what is design-centered entrepreneurship, because I'm talking a lot to my audience and that's what we're going to be talking about. But what does that really mean?
Yeah, so entrepreneurship, if you look at the stats, right, we know that some say 7 out of 10 entrepreneurs end up failing in their business. 4 out of 10 don't make it through the first year. And I would contend that one of the reasons for that, and our authors, my co-authors do as well, is that oftentimes people have great ideas, but they don't have a market, or they're doing something wrong in how they run the business. So what design thinking or design-centered entrepreneurship is putting the design processes and practices front and center into the entrepreneurship process, so that using design principles and design thinking, you are getting off to a better start with a better design product or service that a customer wants before you invest too many resources.
Mhm. So intrinsic in entrepreneurship, though, isn't that already a problem-solving initiative venture? That in and of itself is problem-solving. When you decide to go into a product or service that is going to solve a problem, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. So what we do, part of the design thinking process is really customer focused, and actually having the customer in the process with you. So it's a lot of really understanding the customer really well, and then trying to get quick feedback. And here's the key. Here's the key part about design is a big part of it is iteration and reframing. So it's a challenge, right? I'm doing some writing on this right now. I'm working on a book and some research papers where there's a paradox that takes place with all entrepreneurs, and that is uh, it's the firm belief and perseverance and grit that helps make somebody entrepreneurial, but it's also that same grit, perseverance, and somewhat stubbornness that also leads them to disregarding information that might actually tell them that it's not the right path. So I call it openness to revision. A lot of people are more open to revision, willing to revise their ideas, and others are stubborn. And sometimes stubbornness works, but the stats show that probably stubbornness gets more people into problems. So, however, that stubbornness is what keeps somebody going. So we do get successes. People eventually get there, but it's kind of a shotgun approach that happens in our economy. So what we do is we say, look, design thinking is a process that if more people were using it, maybe would better their odds of being successful in the marketplace and not have so many random success and failures that take place.
I think, Mike, you've hit the nail right on the head. Entrepreneurship calls for grit and determination and resilience and being passionate and headstrong and all of that on the one hand. But like you mentioned, on the other hand, that is exactly what will prevent or can prevent an entrepreneur from moving forward. How do you recognize that, where do you draw the line? Where do you need to stop and say, hey, perhaps my baby is really ugly. And I need to I need to
Yeah,
consider an alternative, you know what I mean? Giving up that child for adoption. I don't know. Uh,
totally. Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, figuratively speaking, how do you draw that line, that thin line? Where do you draw that line, really?
Yeah, so in creativity, it's well known that there are actually three key skills with divergence, where you ideate, brainstorm, and you just withhold judgment. Withholding
Mhm.
judgment is another skill, and then making decisions and moving forward. So again, the grit and the perseverance are the people who are good at making decisions and moving forward. I would say that something people need to add, a fourth skill, is a revision skill, where they allow themselves time to stop and reflect, take
Mhm.
time to really try to get feedback. And if you're having a hard time doing that yourself, just because of the natural biases, we all have cognitive biases. We all have confirmation bias, which means we accept the information that says we're on the right track. We disregard the information that says we aren't. We've all got sunk cost fallacies, where we say, hey, I've already put money in this. I'm not going to let it go to waste. However, that again, that's throwing good money at, after bad, right? That's a natural biases that we have, and it's those biases that move us forward to a certain degree, but do get us into can get us into big trouble. So I would say the other aspect of that is other people. Now, other people could be a duo, a team, some people on the team who will keep you, maybe be the devil's advocate to keep you in check. So I wrote a book a couple years ago that was a really good seller about Walt Disney. And the thing about Walt Disney as an entrepreneur is part of the reason, really, I would say one of the main reasons he was successful is his brother Roy was the person who would keep Walt in check, and the team ended up working really well together, building that company. And then the other thing is maybe uh, having mentors, people who you trust, who are experienced, who will at least let you think about what you're doing. So I would say at the end of all this, what we hope that you get to, whether you're still stubborn and move forward, you're getting to an informed decision. It's not just
Yeah.
intuition, not just gut, it's not just your spirit telling you that this thing is going to work, but you're also backing it with evidence-based thinking, to where you go, at least I tested this. If you still want to move forward, fine, but at least it is an informed decision, not just surely your entrepreneurial spirit.
Hmm. And that's you said something that's very profound. It's a concept I learned about when I was in procurement, right? Don't throw good money after bad money. And I believe that is one of the main reasons why, persons like, oh my gosh, I've already invested so much into this. I cannot allow it for it to go down the drain. But you're sinking yourself further and further if you're not able to, make that informed decisions that you alluded to, Mike. So Diana over on LinkedIn just said agreed, to what you said earlier. So clearly hey Diana, thank you for joining us. Right. So you've already begun, Mike, to talk about perhaps some stages, those distinct phases and stuff of the innovation process. And it is indeed a process, when you're in your business, when you're working in your business and so headstrong in it, you don't really see straight and clearly to work on your business. And that is what I believe the stages of innovation can help us with. So I want you to share some of those with us, those distinct stages that an entrepreneur ought to go through.
Sure. So, I mean, we do get that idea that, wakes us up at night, or gnaws at us to where we finally feel we have to build this business. And that's just the first step. And then we think it's good to do what we call fact finding, to where you
Hmm.
ask questions to just explore it a little more before you invest too many resources. So we would ask questions like, so there's this customer problem you're trying to solve. What do you know about that problem?
Hmm.
Or what do you not know about this problem but you'd like to find out? If the problem were solved, what would you or customers have that you don't have now? Uh, uh, what have others already thought of or tried? You got to really make sure that you're aware of what's already out there. So as a professor, students will have what they think is a really neat idea, and I can go on YouTube or Google and find about 10 websites, or examples saying people are already doing this. So what's going to be your twist? So finding out what's already out there. And then the other question I really like, and it's one that gets people thinking, is what are you assuming that may or may not be true? Are you making any assumptions? That's a big one. It's amazing
Hmm.
what comes out. So you make this list, and when you diverge, you write them all down. You can see behind me, I have a lot of whiteboard space. You write it down on a whiteboard, you write it down on paper, and then once you get all those down, you go, okay, which of these should we think more about? And from those key statements, we go to the next stage, which we call problem definition. So we start with that original problem, but is there something we've uncovered that maybe we can reframe it in a new way? And the phrasing we use at Dr. Bassiter, Min Bassiter, the co-author on the book, Min is well known for developing and popularizing the phrase, how might we, or how might I? I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but like IDEO, the top design firm, Google,
Hmm.
Microsoft, they use the phrase every day, how might we? And so Dr. Bassiter uh, was the one. There's a lot of videos out there about his development of this phrase, but it you can see the phrasing, how might, isn't how should. It's not how can, it's how might, just open-ended, how might we? And then we just rephrase it and look for all these different new angles. And I'm telling you, it's taken a little time to rephrase and get that new angle on the problem or the solution, where the real insights come. Because chances are, there's actually research on this. For any idea that you come up with, spur of the moment, and you think, hey, I'm going to start a business on this, research has shown that there's at least 7 other people out there thinking of the same idea. So it's slowing down, rethinking it, exploring a little bit more, talking to people more, reframing, that might give you that different angle over the other 7 people who are thinking about the same darn idea you are.
Hmm. Because there's absolutely nothing new under the sun. you
Yeah, I
know?
mean, we live in kind of a zeitgeist, right?
Hmm.
We're broadcasting now, but and we're we're entrepreneurship people. We probably read a
Hmm.
lot of the same things. We are in a global market. We're exposed to things, and so we got a lot of the shared knowledge. We're shared sources, and then the combination of those things, chances are, just by sheer probability, people are going to come up with a lot of the same ideas.
Hmm.
Um, it's that different angle, or it's that root problem that others are overlooking, that you go, look, if we do that really well, other people aren't doing that well, but if we do it well, maybe we'll be really popular with people. I mean, just like yourself, Hanika, you're on show, what, 305 now, about
Yes.
5 years worth of shows.
Yes.
You found something out with your show. There's a million podcasters, but you're in that probably rare 0.1% that are still broadcasting. You found something.
Yeah, thank you. And it's called, it's just sticking to it and ensuring that every single day I show up, even when I don't feel like it. And that's part and parcel of entrepreneurship, and part of showing up is identifying the problem, because part of the stage that you mentioned, that distinct stage, Mike, is tackling that problem. And we know at times it is often more challenging to define the problem than it is to tackle, the problem and get a solution. So just talk to us about why do you think that is? Why do you think it's more at times challenging to really nail down the challenge, the problem?
Yeah, because this is takes a lot of thinking. It takes a lot of patience. Sometimes you have to live with it for a while. You have to make a few mistakes. Ideally, you're making small mistakes before you've put too much in, but you're willing to revise, willing to have those conversations. Uh, but again, that how might we phrase?
And Diana again says she loves that. I love it too, Diana, and I believe me, it's the first I'm hearing of it in this context, and I'll be using it. It's not how should or how could, but you just talk about the possibilities, and being open to exploring different options and ideas. Yes, continue, Mike.
Yeah, totally. It's exactly it. And so
Mhm.
once and here's the thing about the how might we, and in the phrasing and phrasing it into a problem challenge type of statement that you want to answer. You live with that one for a little bit, but then maybe there's a better way of rephrasing it. And then maybe there's a better way of rephrasing it. So you don't have to stick with the first phrase in a how might we. You can
Mhm.
you can work with it and keep getting
Mhm.
it. But that's where when you get that phrasing and you know it, what you're doing is something different. Most people, what they're generating and working with is a solution. And then they're trying to find a customer problem for that solution. But the
Mhm.
how might we says, let's really figure out what problem we're trying to solve. Let's figure out what the customer's real problem. We call it the customer's real problem. What's the customer's real problem? And then if we can then phrase that in a how might we, then we can let our mind be exploring and searching for answers to that really well defined problem. So we think that it's not just the first phrasing how might we. It could be the 10th phrasing, the 12th phrasing, the 100th phrasing, till you go, that's it. That's the real problem.
Mhm.
Um, and what I'll give you an example. I've done consulting, and oftentimes when I go into, say, a company, and they say they have a technology problem, and they think the solution is technology, and I will tell you, about 95% of the time, when they say that it's a technology problem, it usually ends up being a communication problem. There's usually some people problem, that people aren't using the technology the way they expect, or there's miscommunication, or people aren't working well together. And what we think is a technology solution actually just ends up being a way to improve human interactions within that company. That's identifying the real problem. I'll give you another example. I was helping a bank one time, and they were saying that their tellers were always going to the manager, taking up their time asking questions. And we come to understand that what was happening was the branch managers were not training the tellers well on how to develop skills and working with customers. So instead of developing those skills, they were always running to the manager for help. And what we changed was, we said, well, how might we turn the branch managers around from being problem solvers to being coaches? How might we make them coaches to develop the problem-solving skills of the tellers themselves? So that was just something that didn't cost anything, but it was a different reframing of the problem. We can do this with customers all the time. We're trying to offer, we're like, were we really trying to solve that problem, or is it something else? So think about the classic example of Ray Kroc and McDonald's. I'm sure you have McDonald's down there in Jamaica. I'm sure you do. Yeah. So Ray Kroc, I mean, what he ended up doing was, how might we standardize the quality
Oh,
of McDonald's?
we had, sorry, Frey, correct that we had one of the challenge why they had to move this. Jamaicans love big things,
Uh-huh.
and the burgers they say were too small, so we no longer have McDonald's. We have Burger King.
McDonald's is gone. Interesting.
McDonald's is gone. The size of the burgers weren't doing well on this market at all.
Yeah, so they should have reframed that to
Mhm.
where, how might we make burgers that Jamaicans would love, and they would have made bigger burgers, right?
Absolutely.
But I guess the reason I did was actually the solution that Ray Kroc came with was
Mhm.
standardization. So how could he standardize what he thought was a quality burger worldwide? And that standardization, how might we standardize the burger making process,
Mhm.
was the entire thing that McDonald's was built on, and why it ended up being now probably 100,000 outlets all around the world,
Yeah, the best
except
in
in
terms of
Jamaica.
system and franchising.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's just but again, Ray Kroc, if you saw the movie The Founder, did you see that movie with
I
Michael
think
Keaton?
I think I did. It would have been a long time. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it was a
so.
few years ago. It was really great
Yeah.
though, because you watch him reframe the problem into something that then became a success, and then he franchised it worldwide.
Hmm.
But that before that's not the way it was done. He saw a new way of looking at the hamburger
Yeah.
establishment.
Yeah, yeah. Let me just take a quick pause here and talk about the Facebook group, the Entrepreneurial You. So, my friends, yes, Diana watched it. Yeah, I want you to go join the Entrepreneurial You Facebook group. Right now, I am streaming on my profile, but I will not be doing that for much longer. We are right now about close to 300 strong in that group, and I want to take these meaningful conversations there where we have a more targeted group as opposed to being on my profile, which is more a personal thing. So I really want you, my friends, to run over and look for the Entrepreneurial You on Facebook. Join that group because I'll be moving over the Facebook aspect of the streaming to the group rather than my profile. All right. So let me move on and continue. Yes, Diana, she watched that movie. She says it's a great movie. Yeah, glad you watched it and can relate. And Diana you have to throw something out for Diana, Mike. She's been so engaging,
It has been. Hey, so Diana, if you'll send me your email address, I'll send you a signed copy of our book.
Yeah.
My email address is Mike, Mike, at EL profile. So it's ELPROFILE.com. And we'll get a copy out to you if you'll send us your address.
Oh, lovely, 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 lovely. Okay, and I can arrange it for you too. So if you connect with me offline, Diana, we will get it done for you. Okay, and I can send it over to Mike directly for you. All right, so good. Inspiring conversation going a little more, insightful as it relates to creating a design-centered, being a design-centered entrepreneur. I'm hearing a feedback. I'm hearing a
I'm sorry, that was mine. I didn't know that was ringing. I thought I turned that off.
yes.
You heard a incoming email thing there?
Yes, yes, yes. Don't worry about it, Diana. I'll get it for you and send it. I'll get information for you. Don't worry about it. Okay, Diana? Okay, so let's now move into looking at some strategies, some real
I'm sorry about that.
sure.
How do you turn that off? I'm sorry to be interfering.
I have no idea. I have no clue.
I was on another
Um,
podcast earlier and the people didn't hear it, but you're hearing it on this.
yeah, I'm hearing it. I'm hearing it. I'm
I
hearing
will
it.
close. I'm going to
Yeah,
close my
close.
mail.
Yeah, yeah. All righty. All right. So before I go back to Mike with the question I was gonna ask, see, it pays when you tune in live. For those who are listening to the podcast, when you tune in via the live stream, there are perks that you can get. As I build out this aspect of it, I know most of you, all of you pretty much have been tuning into the podcast, but here I am doing live now, and I'm sure it's gonna build. Just like I now have 305 episodes, it's gonna build over time. So, and there's still perks for those who engage, watch online, and engage live. Right. So I was headed to asking you about, so as we look at this, creating or developing design-centered entrepreneurs, what are some of those immersive strategies that we need to undertake in order to just dive deep into the problem where the market is concerned? Making sure that we're not just creating things that we like and we want, but we're creating something that solve a problem, whether it be a service, whether it be a product.
Yeah. So once you have a pretty good idea of what the problem might be, or you've got it pretty well refined, it's good then to uh, start thinking about what's been stopping the customer from solving that problem. So why is that a problem? Talking to customers uh, and sharing with them possible rough ideas of what the solution could be. It could be a raw prototype. It could be a really way that maybe they can just get an idea about what you're trying to do, and getting their feedback, getting feedback again from people who you trust and mentors, and then ideally, even sometimes just providing a low cost, uh, or sometimes even free, if you want to do some user testing, to see how the customer actually uses it and what they think of it. Or do they find it interesting before you go full scale into production? Kind of doing some low cost test runs with it to get their feedback, but then also asking the question, why is this a problem for the customer? Because that might reveal some things as well. So
Mhm.
uh, so you come up that frame question that you think, okay, I think we've got a good idea of what the problem is. Come up with some solutions, then test those solutions, and then when you start, and I'm sure you did this with your show. As you did more and more shows, the shape of it started to evolve, and then now you're live, and you've got people out there, which is, I think you had told me, is a new development for this show.
Yeah, absolutely. Just doing the live. And what you're saying, Mike, is a very simple solution, it would seem, and yet it tends to evade many of us as entrepreneurs. And it's asking questions without jumping to conclusions. This is what the customer want, because I know, I mean, this is what I want, so this is what the customer want. But it's getting to the point of asking those pertinent questions, and peeling back the onion several layers as well. It's not just asking one question. When you get to the response to that first question, then you ask other questions to go beyond the response to that question until you go several layers in, and you're able to identify the core of the problem. You come up with your why. I love what Simon Sinek says: people
Yeah.
don't really buy what you do or even how you do it, they buy why. And it's the why that is so important. Not just your why, but the why in it for them. Everybody's tuned into the radio station WIIFM. What's in it for me? Right?
Hmm.
That's where everybody's
That's
tuned
right.
in. So answering those questions are ought to be front and center of any entrepreneur's mind, anybody who's contemplating going into entrepreneurship. As your experience, Mike, in lecturing entrepreneurs, what are some, outside of not identifying the problem to solve the problem, what are some of those pitfalls that you've recognized firsthand that these entrepreneurs fall into?
Yeah, I tell you what, I have seen, and it goes back to the firm belief, something that somebody's always wanted to do, and it's a real, usually a catastrophe when somebody who's very, very knowledgeable is giving some very tough feedback, and and I actually had students say, it's hard for me to respond or take in the information when it comes across really harshly. And I'm like, well, that's a skill you're going to have to develop, because within that, you got to overlook the delivery and actually find the content. Because I'm all of us, my co-authors and I, believe that what you're looking for are those golden nuggets. There could be sometimes even, like, we have some colleagues that we don't necessarily get along with, but uh, but we know that if you listen long enough, they oftentimes reveal that one nugget, that golden nugget, that's really useful. And I always coach people. It's like, look, you've got to endure. So that's part of the discipline. That's part of the work, is enduring some of the hard stuff and keep your ears open to where something you haven't thought of before might reveal itself. So the message may come across harsh, may not be what we want to hear, but being open to that piece of information, because it doesn't take much sometimes. That one or two key insights can be enough to take you to a new place. And the other thing about this too, related to your earlier point on the why of Simon Sinek, when you get to that why, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they get too divergent sometimes. They have too much going on. You want to really figure out, okay, when you figure out what the business is and you're getting that confirmation, we're limited by time, money, and energy, and our resources, to really driving our resources to the thing that looks like it's working, and to grow those things. And sometimes you got to let some things go that maybe you like, but maybe the customer doesn't.
So it's about developing a thick skin. Don't take things personally. It's not you. It's the idea that we're tearing apart and trying to fix. If you could give us an indication of the percentage, because I know many who study entrepreneurship theoretically, they don't end up going into becoming entrepreneurs after leaving their course of study. So what kind of, in your observation, what kind of a percentage conversion rates are we looking at?
Well, the conversion rate is, if I were saying that, in the classroom, usually it's probably 10 to 25% that go right out of college and start something out of our classes. But the thing we're doing is we're actually training them for when the opportunity that feels right, just as we said, we talked about.
Yeah, not necessarily just no, but whenever it feels right. Yeah.
Yeah, and many of my students have gone on and they worked somewhere else, and they've made their contacts and made some money and had some time. But then 4, 5, 10 years later, they branch off and start their own business. And the research shows that most people start businesses when they're working for someone else, and that's actually smart, right?
Yeah, you get that experience, and you have the security of something. You already know what Patrick McGinnis. I don't know if you know. He was the one who coined the term FOMO, fear of missing out. And he talks about, he has a book on the 10% entrepreneur, and that's what he advocates for. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, because as you said, the security. I mean, and then so the decision ends up being then, when my outside job or my outside activity is getting to be more than my steady check, then I've got safe confirmation that this thing might be worth taking the risk and making it full time. And so I can say that in the entrepreneurship teaching world, there are a lot of professors that maybe work with a student or do other things, and then they go, this school job is taking too much of my time. I got to work on this where there's more opportunity. So what it comes down to, all entrepreneurship is, and we would call it entrepreneurial thinking, and it's why you could do it inside your own company, or somebody else's company, is it's all about opportunity. Where are these circumstances that look like there's a chance to get something really good for yourself, and wherever the opportunity is, having the confidence, having feeling like you've got the ability, the skills to give it a shot. And that's kind of that hurdle. A lot of people don't have that confidence. So one of the things that we hope, that I always ask this question when I do an exit interview with my students, is, do you feel confident if you had an opportunity you wanted to pursue, that you could pursue it? And that's the real test of whether or not we're doing our job as entrepreneurship professors.
Yeah. Awesome sauce. All right. And as we close, Mike, let's talk about, just bring this home, design-centered entrepreneurship, your final thoughts on the topic, and then finally, how my community get in touch with you to get your book and just to connect with you.
Yeah. So design-centered entrepreneurship, the key thing again there would be, if everyone can come away with that idea of patience and letting things develop until you really nail what you think is the best idea. So again, it may not be that first one. It's okay to experiment with it, but when you put your investment in, you want it to be based on a lot of thinking and research. So what design is, it's a process. And so we're very much based on that process leads to better outcomes. And so, the example we often give is if you had an assembly line and you just threw the parts on the floor, you're not going to build a very good car. But if you have an assembly line, you have a process in place, and you're going to build more cars. And so we offer a process that helps people work through the fuzziness and the ambiguity, the uncertainty that comes in entrepreneurship. And if you use these things, we believe that you will have an easier time getting to that idea to build the business on. And so the book is we're published with Routledge. You can find it on Amazon or any other major publishing place where you shop. And it came out in 2022. It's Ambassador Goldsby and Matthews, Design-Centered Entrepreneurship, second edition. And what we did in this version is we put a lot more focus on examples of people coming up with those solutions, coming up with those ways of reframing problems. So we provide a lot of examples in this version of people that you're probably familiar with, or and to get the behind the scenes story on how they did that.
Wow, interesting. Diana, you're making me jealous now. That book is coming to you. All right, no problem. So we
I'll
thank
send you a
you.
copy too, Hanneke.
Oh, I'm getting. See,
Yeah, you're
all
getting
I
a
had to
copy
do was
too.
say I was jealous, and I got a copy.
There you go.
Okay. Awesome sauce. We thank everyone who has tuned in to this great conversation with Mike Goldsby. Mike has just been amazing in his impartation of knowledge about design-centered entrepreneurship. He's a professor of entrepreneurship, and he's an author, co-author with others with this insightful book, which I'm about to get one to read a copy. Yay. Also, Diana, so happy that you were so engaging. So you were rewarded with a copy of Mike's book as well. And let me just tell you, the full name of the book is Design-Centered Entrepreneurship, right? That's, of course, that's it. And it really provides a research-driven step-by-step approach to creative problem solving. So really, really, really great. And I'm looking forward to reading that. I'm sure the examples, because success leaves clues is what I love to say. And we don't need to go and reinvent the wheel at all, because it hasn't been there first. All we need to do is just tweak it to our situation. For me, the question of how might we is very insightful, Mike. Very, very insightful. Like I admit, I never heard it before. In terms of that the context of that, and it makes sense, and you don't come with your predisposed idea of how a problem should be solved, but you consider the options, and that's the important thing. Design-centered entrepreneurship leads to better outcome, right? That process, it leads to better outcome. It really is that problem solving approach to entrepreneurship, and with that, it forces you to put systems in place, systems in place that will autopilot some things, try and test some things. This doesn't work, or maybe this aspect of it works, so let's tweak and wheel and come again, as we say in Jamaica. Have you ever heard that term, Mike?
What is it again?
Wheel and come again.
I have not.
Welcome to Jamrock. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
we call Jamaica Jamrock. Welcome to Jamrock. So
Awesome.
That's it. So I really thought that this particular episode was insightful. It's informative, and I'm looking forward, to airing it as a podcast in a couple of weeks. And to those who are here now live, on YouTube, on not Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn, you get front seat. Like, you're here with your popcorn and your Pepsi and your hot dogs, because you are front row to this conversation. Diana says, Mike, she's looking forward to reading her first book for 2023. Go you.
Awesome.
Yeah, you.
Thank you. And Diana, I want to know what you think of it after you read it. Please.
Right. And if it's on Amazon, then we certainly leave a review on Amazon. I'm trying to get one of the things we have. I don't know if it's a thing in the US as well too, Mike, that we read a lot of books. We probably read a lot of books, but getting persons to review, oh my gosh, it's one of the hardest things. So I'm encouraging everyone. You read an author, you believe that the book gave you value, take a moment and leave a review. It helps a lot. It helps a lot. It's selfish on our part. It really is selfish, myself included, because I'm very guilty. It's selfish on our part when we read somebody's book, we find value, and we don't take the time to leave
Mhm.
a review. We put hard work into writing. Yes, you paid for it in most instances, but nonetheless, you can just be very thing. They read what don't review. Yes, the review is really what we need,
Yeah.
believe me. And thank you, Dana, for being so engaged, and your final feedback, very insightful and informative session. And that's what I intend. I realize that the social media will have a different it's a different audience from the podcast audience, and some who access the podcast may never come over and listen to a live, and vice versa. But at least, I'm trying to capture more and more persons as I grow this podcast. So do like and share and tell others about it. Yes, and leave a review on the podcast. If you can go into any of the podcast app, Stitcher, Google, wherever Apple, wherever you get your podcast, and leave a review on the Entrepreneurial You as well. I totally appreciate it. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm gonna close out now. And again, thank you, Michael Goldsby, for coming and sharing your insight. I've already shared what stood out for me. And so I'd love to hear your feedback, my people. What it is that stood out for you. What was that standout moment? Kindly send me a feedback now at henika.watkis-porter@gmail.com or on social media. And remember, I beg, follow this podcast on your favorite podcast app. And you may also connect with me for all things podcasting at henikawatkisporter.com, whether you want the book, my upcoming course, workshop, coaching, whatever. If you just want to connect with me about leadership or about mentorship or coaching, I am your girl. I want to hear from you. You mean a lot to me. I don't take it for granted that you take the time to, honor me by listening, by watching, and I honor you. According to the scriptures, is how I close out. Those who sacrifice thank offerings honor me, and to the blameless I will show my salvation. Psalms 50, verse 23. What good? All right. Bye, my friends.
Bye.